a third.
Humans will die because they cannot stop their curiosity. As their Schrodinger's cat, physicists will keep making lethal experiments until the poison of strange matter leaves their Pandora box.
But a dead cat is an ignorant cat.
Thus, in the final analysis, we shall learn nothing from physicists' entropic view of the world, but lose every information we have released in a Big Bang explosion in the brief moment of planetary death.
Since an extinct scientist knows not. But if humans were truly intelligent, they would survive by evolving science, as Einstein wanted, not with Big Bang explosions, of which we have had enough, but with thought experiments. Since the true gap of knowledge astrophysics experiences today is not in its technological evolution and the astounding amount of information collected with our sensorial machines, but in the models of space and time physicists use to fit its data, which have not evolved in its logic and mathematical foundations for centuries. Thus physicists still use, as Galileo did, a single clock and arrow of spacetime, linear entropy, which ignores it all about the inverse properties of the dominant motion of the universe, cyclical information, responsible for the creation of life. For that reason, its Big Bang, incomplete models of reality are plagued with experimental and logical errors that make its research largely irrelevant for the advancement of knowledge.
When we look at nature, we see the complexities, the differences among things. Many physicists tend to look for the simplicity that lies at the heart of it all.
The more you learn about nature, the simpler it looks. And that's why I think we will find a final theory. Because although I can imagine things getting infinitely more complicated, complication without end, I can't imagine simplicity without end. The whole progress of physics has been toward a more and more simple description of nature. And how simple can things get? Simplicity must finally terminate. There must be something so simple that we can't imagine anything more simple.
One of them outlines the theory.
Welcome to Fermilab. Today, astronomers see the universe expanding. Imagine running the expansion backwards. Billions of years ago, everything we see in the universe today, everything, the buildings, trees, people, planets, stars out to the most distant galaxies, was once crammed together into a volume smaller than this. And then
Physicists' simplistic, reductionist view of the world is deformed by their worldly profession, making energetic machines that annihilate life and matter. For that reason, they understand reality upside down, believing their weapons and its lineal motions are nature's model of time, and its explosions, which destroy its informative mass cycles, have created the cosmos. Hence, they will annihilate the Earth by replicating those big bangs within their machines, absurdly thinking they are recreating its birth, when they are only causing the simplicity of death that erases the information of life.
Since the extinction of the formative clocks of nature, its mass and charge vortices, which happen in those big bangs across different scales of matter, are only a brief moment of death that releases the energy required to create more complex systems. So the immortal universe keeps its balances between its two eternal motions, energy and information.
Let us then falsify with the 7 pillars of truth of scientific reason the theory of an entropic Big Bang as the birth of the cosmos. In that regard, a mechanist's Big Bang theory of reality breaks all the proofs of the scientific method, starting by its 3 experimental tests. Since machines are inert systems that cannot assemble themselves, thus a universal machine needs a personal cause, a maker or God, of which there is no evidence whatsoever, while a myriad of self-assembling organisms falsifies the concept that all that exists is a mechanism. But the need for a divine creator didn't bother the founding fathers of physics, all of them pious believers who found in mechanism a proof of the existence of the ancient God of the Hebrew. Thus Newton believed this Yahweh sent him comets to help him finding the laws of gravitation. The same deist error happened again in modern times when a priest, Maðer, authored Big Bang Theory, which was soon promoted by all Western churches, as it needs God to create all that exists out of nothing.
His belief in God was the very basis of his existence. As intense as his work was in alchemy, mathematics, and physics, it paled in comparison to studies in theology.
Interpretation of scripture in the 17th century is easily as important for intellectuals as science was.
Newton believed the universe was like a giant clock set into motion by God. But Newton got it wrong.
Our theory for the origin of the universe tells us that the universe came from a single point. All matter, space, time, energy, and even the laws of physics seem to have exploded into existence from that single point.
However, when scientists use the classical laws of physics to figure out how the Big Bang started, they encounter what's called a singularity, a place where the laws of physics seem to break down and a transcendent God is theoretically needed to start the universe.
If the universe was really nothing, that implies something beyond the universe, something transcending the universe created it, to move it from nothing to something when it was nothing. And that transcendent entity, well, that would be God.
This is a real problem for scientists.
Since an external creator fails also the three scientific principles of logic truth. It breaks the principle of economy, which requires internal self-sufficient causes instead of a transcendental, unexplained factor. And it fails both the principles of simplicity and logic consistency, which require simple, rational, testable explanations to any event. But mechanist deism does not explain at all how such biblical creation took place, beyond its narrative.
Unimaginably hot, a super dense speck of pure energy.
The Big Bang was so immense that it brought into existence all of the mass and all of the energy contained in all of the 400 billion galaxies we see in our universe in a region smaller than the size of a single atom. The entire observable universe was a millionth of a billionth of a centimeter across at that time. Everything was compressed into an incredibly hot, dense region. Almost infinite density and infinite temperature and infinite violence.
The fact is, the Big Bang Theory fails all the laws of truth of the scientific method, given its logic and consistency, since temperature is a measure of linear motion, and so infinite temperature should extend into infinite space. It cannot be held within an infinitesimal point with infinite density. Such absurdity does not correspond with rational thought, which is the foundation of science. Thus, despite so much hype, particle colliders and its Big Bang explosions are neither a good model of the cosmos nor the true theory of its birth. They merely provide another entropy-only, mystical, ballistic explanation of reality, born out of the worldly professions of Maðer, a priest, and Gamal, a nuclear physicist who worked on the A-bomb. They only correspond to the arrogance of nuclear physicists, which like to be portrayed as the high priests of science who understand the meaning of everything. Yet such a task corresponds to the philosophy of science, whose goal is to unify all disciplines of knowledge, blending their theories with its epistemological proofs that distinguish falsity from truth. Einstein and Hoyle were aware of those laws of truth. Thus Hoyle mocked Gamal's theory of a cosmic explosion, calling it the Big Bang.
According to this theory, our universe began some 14 billion years ago in an intensely violent explosion.
They authored instead a steady-state theory of the cosmos, which describes a logically sound, immortal, infinite universe based on our direct evidence of it. Thus, Hoyle reduced the scale of those quark explosions to galactic phenomena. Its logic experimentally proved location, observed in ice-9 reactions, star novas and quasars that leave behind remnant gravitational waves found in the galactic background radiation. In that regard, astronomers have falsified the cosmic Big Bang at least 3 times. First, French astronomers calculated the quasar cycle of death and rebirth of spiral galaxies, caused by the Big Bang explosion of its central black holes, to last 20 billion years, which is twice the supposed age of the cosmic Big Bang. Second, they found giant black holes, older than the Big Bang's theoretical age of 14 billion years, given the long period of accretion black holes need to reach such enormous size. Thus, since black holes and galaxies are older than the cosmic Big Bang, they falsify it. And we must attribute the gravitational waves found in the galactic background radiation, a trademark of black holes, to the last quasar cycle of the Milky Way. Third, galaxies do not leave shadows in a supposed universal radiation, which proves the Big Bang is local, since it didn't happen around those galaxies.
With colleague Arno Penzias, Bob Wilson plans to use this microwave antenna to study our galaxy.
Every time we started up, we saw the same noise level. Everywhere in the sky we pointed, we saw the same noise level.
In fact, he doesn't believe in the Big Bang, but prefers a universe with no beginning or end.
I like the steady state. It is philosophically satisfying because there's no end to the universe in the future. It goes on forever in the same sort of state that it is. And there's no beginning for it either. So physicists generally like steady state because they don't like to have a time beyond which they can't know anything.
So Bob Wilson found in the galaxy, and only in the galaxy, an ultra-cold electromagnetic radiation.
For that reason, the distribution of the black body background radiation, falsely attributed to a cosmic explosion, has the exact form of the galaxy where it is located. Furthermore, the only known objects that emit such radiation at present time are black holes, with a low temperature inversely proportional to its size. Thus we see in the middle of the galaxy, occupied by a swarm of giant black holes, the coldest region of the radiation. While the remaining galactic radiation shows a mean temperature of 2.7 degrees, which corresponds exactly to the radiated temperature of a black hole with the mass of a moon, the most common planetoid of our galaxy. A fact which strongly supports the hypothesis that even if our moon is still here, according to CERN's mindless safety statements, ultimately all moons become devoured and converted into small black holes and strangelets.
In that regard, the most striking proof of the local, galactic nature of the background radiation came in recent years, when astronomers found that the supposedly gamma-burst explosion that took place 14 billion years ago imprinted in the background radiation was also local and happening now.
Gamma ray bursts. Strange blasts of energy from the farthest reaches of the universe of 13 billion years ago, truly different from our now. Photons race out of a gamma ray burst billion light years away.
But they turned out to be not so far, not so old, since they detected the burst, by direct observation, coming out of the central black hole of the Milky Way. Thus, the background radiation is indeed local, caused by black holes and dark matter. A fact that validates once more a fundamental law of evidence and proves of the scientific method. Any experimental fact observed locally and now must have its cause in an event happening locally, now, in the same spacetime than the event it describes. The background radiation and its central gamma burst observed on top of the central black hole of this galaxy cannot be ascribed to an external hypothetical reason, supposedly located in a remote past out of our direct range of spatial and temporal observations, which contradicts them. As the cosmic explosion requires a much higher temperature than the ultra-cold, observed temperature of the present universe, proper of its dominant black holes and dark matter. To put an analogy, the temperature of our body is 37 degrees, caused by the local activity happening now of our dominant body network, the blood system and its attached cells. Thus, in the case of the galaxy, the mean temperature of its body must come from its dominant networks of dark matter and black holes, which account for 2/3 of the matter observed on that galactic mapping and an even higher proportion observed in the halo. To ascribe that temperature to a hot, past, cosmic Big Bang, concocted by extending billions of years into the past, an abstract, lineal equation, whose steep slope was corrected ad hoc to reach that absurd temperature, would be as if a doctor tells you he has this fascinating theory about your body temperature, according to which it is not caused by your blood metabolism. It is caused by the sun. And it was 1 billion degrees hotter at your birth, since your atoms were then all there, and he has scrabbled an equation that he runs to the past to prove it, and vice versa. If you don't trust him, the same equation, running forwards, will freeze you down back to your 37 degrees and beyond. And to prove it, he is gonna burn the hospital. And you agree? That sort of inquisition of thought is exactly what nuclear physicists at CERN make us believe.
We will get a temperature which is 10 to the 16 Kelvin. Now this is 1 billion times the temperature in the center of the sun. And now knowing that temperature, we can actually calculate at what time the universe had this temperature to see with time we are actually recreating. And in fact, it turns out to be somewhere around between the 10th and 100th of a billionth of a second after the birth of the entire universe, when the visible universe was no bigger than a few centimeters.
Finally, the redshift elongation of light coming from faraway galaxies, proportional to its distance from Earth, has two explanations simpler than a supposed cosmic explosion that keeps dilating universal space. On the one hand, it corresponds to the well-known Doppler effect that stretches all waves, which move away from us, as their receding speed increases its wavelength towards red colors. On the other hand, light space becomes tired and elongates its waves markedly after its mature half-life of 5 billion years. Finally, quasar light disappears beyond the 10 billion year horizon, the maximal life of stars and light space that dissolves into its lower gravitational scale with no information, as all systems, when dying, erase their form, expanding into space. Yet the inverse condensation of light space into cyclical particles, charges and masses, due to the gravitational curvature of galactic vortices and the emission of jets of cyclical matter by its central black holes, balances the expansion of intergalactic light space. Thus, in all systems, the metric product of the frequency of its accelerating time vortices and its decelerating spatial energy, called momentum, remains constant, because both motions can transform into each other ad eternal. So the universe constantly balances its two inverse formal motions, creating its infinite, fractal scales of complementary organisms of energy and information. So the total cosmic volume of lineal and cyclical motions, of space and time, remains an eternal, dynamic zero-sum made of infinite life-death cycles of radiation and matter, caused by the two inverse sides of Einstein's equivalence principle between energy and mass, from the quantum world to the galactic cosmos.
Since it is precisely the existence of two motions with inverse properties, energy and information, in perpetual transformation, what makes the universe infinite both in time and space. Since a material universe, in which masses and charges were solid, still particles as common people think, would die, when its vibrational motions wear out, becoming an atomic skeleton. While a universe with only one type of motion, ever-expanding lineal entropy, as physicists believe, would die away, torn apart into an emptiness without form.
Dark energy will continue to push the galaxies farther and farther apart until ultimately they be pushed so far apart that the universe would become a cold, dark, and lonely place. In another scenario, the strength of dark energy might increase over time, becoming so strong that it would tear apart everything within the galaxies, from stars to planets to matter of all kind.
If the dark energy grows with time, then ultimately even atoms will get ripped apart when there's enough dark energy between the nuclei and the electrons to rip space apart. The Big Rip.
But neither of both partial descriptions of reality holds logically or experimentally. Since the fundamental law of science is the conservation of its total energy and information. Thus, reality never stops since energy never dies. It transforms back and forth into cyclical forms of information.